Good morning. I'm Dwayne Lindo, and welcome to our new edition of Black Almanac. I'll be your host for the next coming weeks. This program will continue to focus on matters that are not only important to communities in Sarasota County, but Manatee County as well, continuing the vision Dr. Edward James had in making sure everyone in this area, regardless of race, was on an equal playing field. Today, sitting in on Black Almanac, we have Sarasota Police Chief Bernadette DePino, community members Jetson Grimes and Valerie Bouchon. Well, Chief DePino, Jetson Grimes, Valerie Bouchon, I'd like to thank you for joining us this morning. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
Now, I know the past couple months has been fairly rough in North Sarasota, where we've had a little bit of gun violence throughout the city. I know, Chief, I'm going to start with you. I know there's things that you've been doing in the past to try to keep this gun violence down, but let me ask you right off the bat. What do you attribute this gun violence to? Are these isolated incidents? Are some of these shootings related? What's going on here?
Well, it's a great question. First, the city of Sarasota and North Sarasota, which to me is part of the city of Sarasota, is very safe. The community is very safe. The people in the community are active and engaged, and these are isolated incidents. And there are reasons for these different shootings that are taking place, and most of the shootings involve people that know each other.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know there's things in the past that you've been doing to try to rectify a lot of this gun violence that's going on. But Jet, let me defer to you real quick. I know you've bared witness to what's been going on in the community, mostly positive. Mm-hmm. For a very long time. Right. You've been a resident here since day one. Let me ask you this. What do you think of, or what do you attribute a lot of these issues to, if anything?
Well, I think the community definitely is in a transition. And a lot of times these are symptoms of the real problem. And it seemed to be, as I look at, the community and being in the community for a number of years, a lot of it is drug related and retaliation. And I think once you kind of be able to, working with the Sarasota Police Department, working together and alleviate a lot of the drug activities, you're going to see a lot of the crime dissipate in that community.
Mm-hmm. Now, Chief, there's been things that meetings that you've conducted in the past. Valerie has been a huge part of these meetings that you've conducted as Chief of Police in Sarasota. And I'll go to Valerie in a second here. But tell me about some of the, specifically the Stop the Gun Violence meetings you've had with the community as of late.
Well, I'm really proud of the meeting we had recently, and we have one that just took place Thursday night, where it's our second meeting, where we had a group of individuals from the community got together, and we had 5 different topics that were specific to areas where we can help reduce gun violence. One was legislative, one dealt with education, another with the community, one was law enforcement, and the other was mental health and also medical health related to gun violence. And we feel like when we bring all of these partners together, we can come up with creative solutions to try to mitigate these problems. And Mr. Grimes is exactly right. A lot of these incidents involved gun violence is from drugs and retaliatory based on guns. Some of them are street robberies where they're stealing from each other. We did a great job at the beginning of the year. We actually arrested a significant number of drug dealers in our community. And what that did was cause a vacuum. And when you have that kind of vacuum, sometimes people like to fill that vacuum. So we're looking at with this strategy with the End the Gun Violence is looking at creative solutions that are not just about arresting people. It's what can we do to prevent gun violence and what can we do to identify why the gun violence is happening. I just was in a meeting in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago about gun violence, and leaders from across the nation, from New York to Boston, Chicago, some of the areas where they're having the biggest gun problems, they mirror what's happening in our own community. It made me feel good knowing that ours is such a small scale and so isolated compared to some of these large urban areas. But to me and members of our community, one shooting is one shooting too much. One homicide is one homicide too much. And we're going to do everything together in partnership to stop this from happening in our community. But what they found was the reason for these shootings were that people were more scared not to carry a gun on the street than they were of the police finding them and arresting them for illegally carrying a gun. So we have to look at, why is that? What is the fear that these young people are having to carry the guns? Let's alleviate that fear. Let's divert the attention over to family, education, and ways to mitigate some of the economic challenges. We need to get and make sure we have jobs for these young people to be able to partake in, so that they aren't involved with the drug activity or even having to carry a gun. And I think the community is doing a great job of opening up those economic opportunities, but we are in flux and it's about to change. I see it significantly, but we have to stay on top of it.
Now, Valerie, the chief mentioned that education is a huge part of trying to make the turnaround. Obviously, Newtown I've been a part of the community for years. Great things going on there. Most, if not all, the people that I've met in the community, great folks. But let me ask you this: education specifically. Do you think education is a huge part of trying to turn everything around, specifically getting the gun violence out of the streets?
I think that you have to have some education. I think that it's a mindset, a change in mind as well as heart. And you can only do that one person at a time. Because, you know, let's be honest. We have no idea what goes on in one's mind. And all we can do is be there to help, because, you know, you perish from the lack of knowledge. So as people educate themselves on how to deal with troublesome people, you know, that's a big component within itself. But if people have aught with one another and they don't know how to solve their aught except for shooting, you know, when I was coming up, we fought and you were friends the next day. But now these people, you know, they get guns, and where they get them from, I have not a clue. But education is definitely one of the ways.
Now, the chief and Sarasota Police, they've had meetings with the community throughout the chief's tenure here for years. I've been to a few of those, and I've seen you at every single meeting. Specifically, what do you think is the solution to try to eliminate some of the guns out in the streets of North Sarasota?
Well, that is a very big question, and if I had the answer, I probably would tweet it out.
Well, you're a smart lady. I mean, we've had many conversations, so I know there's solutions. I mean, not easy solutions. I understand that, but there's at least solutions to try to mitigate some of the issues, you know, that have been going on.
I think the community coming together is a start. I believe that cleaning up our community is another part of that. I believe keep having these meetings that people will come. And the people have to get seriously concerned about the community, because living in fear is a prison, and you got to participate in order to have solutions. But the one solution of how to get it done, I don't have the answer to that.
Now, I know we have talked to you in the past, News has talked to you in the past. I know community policing is something that's near and dear to your heart, Chief. Let me ask you this. How does community policing, I know this may be kind of a generic question, but I think it's an important question. How does community policing play a part in the role of alleviating a lot of the violence that we've been seeing of late?
It plays a significant part. Community policing is about building relationships and trust, but it's also about problem solving, and that's what we're doing right now with these meetings. When you ask how do we alleviate the gun violence, well, we have to understand why the gun violence is taking place, and we have some indications why. And one of the biggest statistics that I've learned recently, and it wasn't a surprise to me, is that the guns that are being used in these crimes are illegally obtained guns. It's not a law-abiding citizen that's got this gun. It's somebody that obtained this gun that's been stolen. And where are they stolen from? They're stolen from legally law-abiding owners of guns. And where they're stealing the guns from are unlocked cars. So please lock your guns in the car. Don't leave your gun unsecured in a car. They're being stolen out of houses and burglaries because people aren't putting guns in safes. So if we can just reduce the number of stolen and illegal guns that are out on the streets, which are actually owned by legal gun owners, they're obtained legally, but then fall in the hands of individuals that use them in crimes, that will reduce gun violence significantly. But it's more than that. Valerie hit on a great point. It's not just one blanketed silver bullet, for lack of a better way of saying it, solution to the issue and the problem. We have to look at each individual and find out why they're committing these crimes. And I'm so committed to doing this is that every time we have a shooting in our city, I am convening a group of my highest ranking individuals within the departments and detectives and crime analysts, and we're going to break that crime down apart. Who is the victim? Who is the suspect? What type of weapon is being used? Why was it used? Where did the gun come from? Where did the location take place? Is it an area that needs to be beautified in the broken windows theory where we have a beautiful community? And I know Valerie, and I'm working with her on a committee in the fall, they're going to have a community cleanup. That makes a difference because people that are criminals know an area that's not well maintained. Nobody's paying attention to that area, so they gravitate there. So if we have an area, and I have to tell you, 95% of North Sarasota is clean, people keep their gardens nice, their yards nice, but there is a percentage that needs to be cleaned up, and we're going to work together as a community to help alleviate that. So we need some volunteers. So if you're hearing this and you want to volunteer, get a hold of Valerie or me.
Right.
We're involved. So there are initiatives, but problem solving is going to help us to understand and identify solutions, but also the community trusting the police. There are moms and dads and grandparents and sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles that know that their family member is carrying a gun illegally. And what they need to do is to report that to us so that that person doesn't either commit a crime themselves, which will end them up in jail and their life will be over for the time that they're in jail, or they could get shot or seriously hurt and their life is over there also. So we need the community to trust that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that that person gets a chance, and maybe like we do with our drug market intervention, defer them, give them an opportunity to get an education and get a job. But we need people in the community to trust us and report to us when they know one of their loved ones is carrying a handgun or has obtained a handgun illegally, or just call us and say, hey, come pick up this handgun because we know somebody's going to hurt somebody with it.
And you mentioned trust. Obviously, there needs to be trust on both sides between the police side and the community side. And I know you spoke with ABC 7 a couple weeks ago, and you mentioned that police need to kind of address their own behaviors as well. I mean, can you explain that a little bit?
Well, with it's been a great turnover because a lot of officers that I knew, they have retired and new officers are coming in. And we have built a relationship with the officers that have retired. And so, you know, you have some officers that's not as friendly. We have some officers that have other issues, some that don't need to be in North Sarasota. So the police have to deal with the issues that their staff have, just as the community have to deal with their issues, because two wrongs don't make a right. So you know, if we, you know, see after our own issues, then we can come together in a common cause to live together. So and that's vital. That's very important. Because we can't beat up on one and let the other go, you know. And so I think that we all have to address some issues there. But, you know, you got to have a humble spirit in order to do that.
Now, going off of what Ms. Bouchard said, Chief, what do you do with these new officers, this new batch of recruits that come in that that may not, you know, you may have new officers that may be from other cities or other states that are not familiar with Sarasota. What do you do specifically as chief to try to get them to know the community and be part of the community as a whole?
Yeah, well, that's so important to me. First of all, I teach every single officer in our police department about community policing and the expectations that I have for them, and including being ambassadors, treat people the way that they would like to be treated, or how they would like their mother to be treated if they're encountered by a police officer. And we do have, we've hired about 60 brand new police officers out of 169. That's significant. And all of them are going to the patrol division, which means 2/3 of our patrol division are new officers. So they're just learning the job, and that takes them a little bit of time just to feel confident and learn the job. And if you look nationwide, there has been some attacks on police officers, so they're going to be very cautious. So we're teaching them, listen, and that's where it's important to build the relationships with people in our community, to know that 95% of the people that live in Newtown or throughout the city of Sarasota love, support, appreciate law enforcement. So while I hate to use the F word, which is fear, our police officers are a little bit fearful and have to be careful, because they know there is some gun violence that takes place within our community. But they need to also recognize that the majority of the people in our community are not carrying guns, that are not shooting or trying to hurt police officers. So they get good field training with their field training officers. We have our officers attend our Amaryllis Park community meetings when we have National Night Out. Then the officers get a chance to actually indoctrinate themselves and be part of the community. Like I go to the farmer's market and I buy vegetables from Valerie when that's set up on MLK. And, you know, just having a personal relationship where Valerie feels comfortable. She can call me, or I can call her, or our Mr. Jetson. We can talk to each other. Officers need to know that makes them safer on the job by knowing and engaging with citizens in the community. And that's what I teach them when I teach them the community policing. And that's what we espouse in our agency. And if I find our officers aren't doing it, I encourage citizens to please call me. And I have them call me, and they can lodge complaints against the officers, and I take those very seriously. And then we investigate them, because that is important, that we are part of our community. And you have to realize police officers do this job because they want to make a positive difference. They want to see the positive and good in life. They have the most honorable intentions when they join the police force to go out and make a positive difference in the community. So we want to make sure they have that a whole lifetime, their whole career as police officers.
Now, okay, go ahead, Jetson.
Oh yeah, I just kind of want to piggyback on the chief there. Being a businessman and being in that community for a long time, I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years with the community policing has been truly effective. Twice a week, I have the officers come through my shop. I've gotten a chance to meet them on a personal level. A lot of my customers have met them on a personal level. And that's going to be one of the things that's going to make a difference in any community. When you're able to relate to each other, you know, bring the inclusiveness of working with each other. And once that happens, you'll start seeing a lot of the crime, and people, if they see crime, they will share, you know, they break that fear barrier down. And the other thing I like to say, sometimes there is a lot of opportunities in the community, and sometimes we have to become surrogate families, have to guide our young people to those opportunities. And I look at Vote Technical, SCTI, opportunities of getting those kids, you know, off the street, getting them into a training program. And a lot of times, if we can start doing that, you'll start a lot of the kids that is on the street, you'll be able to eliminate a lot of that crime that we have with that problem.
Now, one of the things that Ms. Bouchard brought up was the changing of officers. Officers eventually retire. You've been in the community, as you said, a business owner for a very long time in the Newtown community. Officers retire, and there's a new batch of officers that come in. In your opinion, how is that transition? I mean, does the community work out well with a lot of the new officers that come in? Do folks within the community get to know the officers and vice versa from where you stand?
If they become visible, and what I've seen in Alaska, and just like the chief was saying, that there has been probably about 60 officers have joined the force in the last year or so. But each one of the guys that usually come into my shop, one of the officers, they usually bring a new person. So that gives them opportunity to meet the people in the community. So they're not strangers. So if they continue to do that, you know, the new officers will get familiarized with the community and the community get familiarized with them.
And it's tough, I have to tell you, because while we're lucky, we know where the salon is and we can go in there, but sometimes it's hard to meet people in the neighborhoods because you can't just walk up and knock on a door, because then people are like, well, hey, what are you doing on my property? Why are you here? So the more community events that we can be involved with, like the cleanup day that's coming in the fall, and we have our officers there and they're part of the cleanup and part of the community. I'm all about breaking bread. The more, if we have a barbecue or a picnic or an event that happens with the community, and then it's a social interaction, as opposed to the first time that you meet a police officer is when you call the police because you had a crime committed against you, or you're a victim, or you're pulled over for a traffic violation. That's not the time to be establishing relationships with people in the community. It needs to be on a different level, and we're really pushing that more and more for our police officers. But we need time to do that. We need time, and most of our officers are tied up on going from call to call to call. So we need more police officers in our community to give them more time and flexibility to be able to engage with going to the businesses, stopping at the farmers market, engaging with people throughout the community in a not enforceable role.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the Newtown Nation, that's what we envision, being an avenue, a venue that people can come and meet and do things and get information at the market. So because we have a couple of officers that come by when we are there with the market on Friday and Saturday, and they actually talk to us. And then there are others that they just come and they wave and go about their business. But you never know a person except you engage with them. Mm-hmm. And so we need our community to engage, and that's the only way we're going to do it. But as the chief alerted to, we're getting ready to have a big community cleanup. Mr. Grimes has agreed to be part of that. And
when is this community cleanup?
October the 27th, right after our Big Mama Collard Green Festival. And you know, if you clean up the community, it'll have a great deal of impact of that crime don't live here anymore. You see, and it's more than just pick up paper and picking up debris. It's about cutting, edging, trimming back branches, and you know, a community coming together to see that, hey, you can't hide behind these bushes no more, you know. And so we're excited about that. But the more engagement the community does, the better it'll be.
And I tell you, violent crime in North Sarasota has been reducing over the last year. So, you know, I see a very positive trend. We look at statistics, and I'm concerned about what I've seen at the beginning of this year. But violent crime has been going down significantly. And I give credit to not only our police officers, but I really give our credit to the community members who care, who embrace the police officers, who are working with us and coming up with these different creative strategies. You know, just look at the MLK corridor, look at the Fred Atkins Park. Environmental design has something to do with the attractiveness and the appearance of a community that helps to reduce crime, or people looking and saying, wow, yeah, this doesn't look like a place where I should commit a crime, because look at the streets are well maintained, there's trees, there's flowers, there's engagement, there's active people out on the street, you have a farmer's market. Those are all things that go to helping reduce crime without necessarily putting handcuffs on somebody.
Yeah, and in addition to what you just mentioned, Chief, there's 66 surveillance cameras kind of strategically placed all over the city. Unfortunately, some of them are inoperable.
The majority of them are.
Yeah.
And that's because technology costs money. Technology changes all the time. You know that. Anybody that owns a cell phone knows that you almost have to change it every 2 to 3 years, and it's the same thing with the cameras. And I can tell you the city manager has actually, in this upcoming budget, which is going to go before the city commissioners, money aside for an individual to be able to maintain and manage all the cameras throughout the whole city, money to be able to look at how much it's going to cost to lay the infrastructure down, which is important, and then maintain those cameras, because I know the community is a huge supporter and advocate of cameras. They act as deterrents, but they also act as ways for law enforcement to be able to go back and take a look at and identify who's involved in some of these activities. And so sometimes people say, oh, that's the police, they want to be Big Brother, but what I found is that our community wants the cameras there to help, keep the community the safe, good place that it is. And I'm a huge supporter and proponent of the cameras, because they do help us be able to identify things after the fact. You don't have police officers sitting there just looking at cameras and waiting for things to happen. But if something happens, they can go back and retrieve the data. And I think most people in our world recognize that there are cameras everywhere. And if it's not the one I'm holding in my hand and filming, there are cameras at restaurants, on street corners, red light cameras. There's cameras all over the place. So the city having cameras is that same type of philosophy. And it would also allow citizens to have access to seeing those cameras and see what's going on in their community during storms, during heavy traffic. So there's lots of benefits, but I see that as being what the future of our city is increasing the number of cameras, fixing the ones that are already broken. And a lot of it has to do with the buildings. Big buildings were built, so line of sight for wireless cameras were impacted by those buildings. So there needs to be a different either infrastructure or different towers or different ways for them to be able to have access to the wireless camera systems. And now, the other cool thing is we probably need less cameras, because now the cameras have a wider view, and they can also tilt and pan, as opposed to just necessarily having a stationary, but they also have a wider area, so you have less need for more cameras. So instead of where you had like maybe 5, you may only need 2.
Right. And Jetson and Valerie, would you say that you're a big proponent of having these cameras put back into service?
Well, you have to look at perception too, okay? Sometimes when you say you have all the cameras or most of the cameras in the Newtown community, it sends the message that it's an unsafe community. But if it's
But that's not the case.
That's not the case, so we have to be careful how it's projected, in the news media, and I think all of that is important. So definitely we need cameras. We need to feel safe, but don't want to say that it's not safe in downtown, a Longbow Key, a Siesta Key. Don't put all the emphasis on the Newtown community. So that's where I kind of look at with the cameras, but we definitely need cameras.
Well, guys, that's all the time we have for today. I mean, I wish we had another half an hour to kind of discuss what's going on in North Sarasota. Valerie, Jetson, Chief DePino, thanks for being here this morning, and hopefully we can have you guys again sometime soon. We'll see you next week on Black Almanac. Have a great day, Suncoast.
There's a lot of fear in coming back to school. I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but one of the teachers was Miss Araceli. She gave me direction. Every single time I had a question, she'll put down whatever she's doing and she'll sit there with you until you get it. 50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Hurricane season is here, and so is the official Suncoast Hurricane Guide from ABC 7. This essential resource arms you with vital information you need to protect your family and property when severe weather threatens the Suncoast, including how to create your readiness plan and survival kit, shelter locations, what to do with pets, and important phone numbers. Visit mysuncoast.com and download the official Suncoast Hurricane Guide from ABC 7. Brought to you by Batteries Plus, the Florida Lottery, and Sarasota Glass and Mirror. ABC 7 News at 7, weeknights.